by the time it's been lovingly cleaned, restored, everything done beautifully, you're not going to replace this retail for anything under 30 to 35,000.
Good heavens above. My wife will never believe it.
Here we are in Sydney, Australia, and here is a collection, a most fabulous collection of Maria Callas, fabulous photographs and letters. Why Maria Callas? Why not Sutherland? Why not Nellie Melba?
Well, my mum gave me a recording of the Barber of Seville back when I was 10 or 11 or something, and the voice just amazed me. And I think I've always started collecting her ever since. I have friends who worked with her.
But this is a very sophisticated collection. I mean, this is quite incredible. I've never seen anything like it. And you've got piles of them here. You've got these ones by
Angus MacBean,
of course. Mm-hmm. But there's piles of them.
Yeah.
All signed. But which is your favourite thing here?
Well, I think my favourite is the London Traviata, for which this
one here.
But I've also brought in Tosca, also from London, and Norma from London, all great British photographers. And she owned these photographs herself, of course, and gave them to fans.
Yes. I mean, as much as I love the signed photographs and how personal they are, I go to the letters, which I feel actually illuminate her rather more. There's one here to Dearest Henry.
Henry is an unknown friend of Maria's, and this was written in 1949, before she got married, where she is telling him how much she's in love and that she desperately needs her birth certificate to get married in Italy, and it confirms her full name, her parents' names, her real date of birth, and you know how happy she is, etc., etc.
Would you see? I mean, that to me is more exciting, really.
It's unpublished too, you know, so never been seen.
That's even better. And now this one just goes on for pages.
I know. Well,
Dearest Leo, I've received your very dear letter. What's that about?
Well, Leo was her godfather, whom she confided in the 60s through the 70s, and here in 1975 she's bemoaning the loss of the voice, that she may have to go back and sing, that De Stefano loved her but that they couldn't get married.
It goes on for pages and pages and pages. I mean, if you were text messaging this, I mean, it would go in sort of 2 lines or something, wouldn't it? But this is very much, it's very much more important. So how many items have you got altogether?
I guess maybe 70 or 80 signed photographs of varying sizes, and maybe 20 letters.
Well, you see, I think 20 letters are very, very rare. Well, autographically, theoretically, she shouldn't be rare because she is an opera singer and would give all these things to her friends. But people are incredibly excited by Maria Callas.
I think she wasn't so rare. It's just that the demand exceeds the generous supply, and very much so.
That's about the size of it.
Not going away.
And certainly in America, she's very hot.
Oh yeah, everywhere.
And do you think in Australia she's very hot too?
Absolutely.
And England too is very, very keen on her as well, and all her recordings.
And I was fortunate to see her in the Festival Hall in London in 1974. Not the voice it was, but
even so,
it was still
across, there. Yes,
you know?
I think that's wonderful. Now look, how long has this collection taken?
20 years, I guess.
How much have you paid for it all?
Oh, thousands, I guess.
I should think you have. I would say that you've got Australian, the best part of $250,000 Australian dollars.
Oh, good grief.
Which is something like 100 to 125,000 pounds.
Wow. Sure.
It's a fantastic collection and wonderful to see it. Thank you for bringing it in.
Well, it's going back to England eventually. I've decided in my will to leave it to the Victoria and Albert Museum in London.
Is that the right place for it, do you think?
I think so, yes. The performance section, she loved London. Yes. She loved the audiences there. I thought let's keep it in the English-speaking world and let's London. I used to live in England and loved the V&A, so why not?
Yes. Well,
they're very happy to be receiving
I think that's very generous of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Let me ask you then, why is it so dirty? Do you not look after it?
No, it lives in a box in the attic because it's so ugly.
Really?
Yeah.
Who banished it up there?
My wife.
And how long ago did she put it up there, dare I ask?
Well, it was given to me about 5 years ago and it was put straight into the attic.
My husband inherited the clock from his uncle, and when he brought it home, I wasn't impressed at all.
Underneath all this filth and mess, we have the most wonderful bronze bull, and he's standing
It was very ugly, very dirty. We didn't realise how dirty until we were told how dirty it was on the roadshow. I thought that's the colour it was supposed to be.
You're lucky. Look, the original pendulum.
Still there.
Still there.
I had a feeling that the clock was going to be worth perhaps a couple of £1,000 because it was pretty old.
Even in this state, I think your initial offer would be in the region of 20,000.
20?
£20,000 in the rough like this.
Good heavens. When they double, treble or quadruple the value that you have in mind, it's just unbelievable.
By the time it's been lovingly cleaned, restored, everything done beautifully, you're not going to replace this retail for anything under 30 to 35,000.
Good heavens above. My wife will never believe it.
I said, "Oh, how'd you get on?" So he said he was quiet, awfully quiet, and his lip was quivering a little bit.
And I managed to blurt out the fact that Richard Price had said, oh, in its present state it's worth £20,000. But when I got to the £30,000 mark, I was getting a bit too excited and a bit emotional.
It just didn't enter my head, or Keith's, that it could be that valuable.
I said to Audrey, I said, well, I want to see it restored. OK, we're going to sell it, but I want to see it restored. I want to see what it really should look like.
It was obviously rather worrying, the fact that it had been in the attic for such a long time, and there may have been a little bit of damp there, but considering it survived very, very well. When we removed the springs from the barrels, they were actually signed and dated by the manufacturer, February 1754. So this is exciting because it's another thing that we can use to date the clock quite accurately. The moment of truth.
Wow.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, you've done a great job. That's fantastic.
Wow.
It's beautiful. Yeah. It really is.
We were very
You would
happy.
never have believed that it would have looked as good as this.
It was so black, and of course you're never quite sure what's going to be underneath.
It's absolutely marvellous.
Absolutely, yeah.
You've praised with it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
No, it's not quite so ugly.
Well, they were given to my great-grandfather, who was chef to Edward VII and Queen Victoria at the end of her reign, by the crowned heads of Europe, and some of these are the Russian pieces.
Amazing. Now, do you think that they were objects given almost as a sort of thank you to this?
That's right, yes.
And is this all the things that you have? Are there any more?
No, I have some other pieces which come from Manuel of Portugal, Kaiser Bill.
All the visitors to Sandringham, all the visitors to Buckingham Palace, all the cousins of the British royal family that are descended from Queen Victoria.
That's right,
in a sense, she's sort of fountainhead of this sort of society, European royal society. Let's have a look at those. These are Russian ones, and a pair of gold cufflinks set with rubies and diamonds, alternating rubies and diamonds, in a sort of nugget effect.
Nugget, that's what I've always been told, yes, gold nuggets.
And there's a most marvellous word in Russia used to describe this, which is called samorodok, which means a nugget. And it's a very, very Russian technique, much favoured by Fabergé. And in fact, these are not by Fabergé, and the lid satin rather conveniently tells us that they're made by somebody called Ivanov, working in St. Petersburg. And it's certain that they are a gift from the member of the Imperial family, because the Imperial family's cipher appears above.
Yes.
And do you know exactly who gave those?
I think it was Tsar Nicholas.
He certainly came to London, and he certainly went to Sandringham, and there were many opportunities in which he could have offered those. Tell me about what you know about him as a chef. Why was he so favoured, do you think?
Well, he was a Frenchman to start with, and I understand he'd been chef to people like the Rothschilds and had been to Saltram in Devon. And Edward VII heard of him and wanted him to be his chef, and I think he may have poached him.
What did he look like? Do we know what he looked like?
Yes, I have a picture here.
Oh, isn't it marvellous? And with his
of
family?
His family, with mother, with his wife, and the two daughters, my grandmother and my aunt.
Oh, that's very touching, isn't it? My goodness.
Yes,
he looks quite sort of...
avuncular.
Well, doesn't he? He's a brilliant chap, I must say.
Yes.
And so these were his things. Well, let's just run through them a little bit further. Have you thought about these ones here?
Well, I have been told that they were cufflinks, but they have little rings on, as you can see just there. And I really don't know. I imagine because they were given to my great-grandfather, they must have been cufflinks, I feel, and because he only had daughters, possibly the daughters had them made into brooches or pendants.
I think what has happened, and rather sadly, is that when these adaptations have been made to turn them into brooches, that the marks have been lost. But these are very characteristic of Fabergé's work. We call this guilloché enamel, and it's an engine-turned gold mount that's flooded with translucent pink enamel. And then the imperial eagle is applied as a gold cipher over and above that. In every way, they're positively reek of Fabergé. But in stamp collecting terms, I can't be absolutely certain. But I can be certain about this one. And does the family history say that that was an imperial gift?
They do. They do say, the family told me that that was definitely given by Tsar Nicholas.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt about that at all. And there's absolutely no doubt at all that this is a full-blown Fabergé brooch. It is.
Oh, wonderful.
It's signed.
Because I wondered, and I sort of half hoped it would be, and that's marvellous.
Well, it's a most distinguished thing. Again, the use of the guilloché enamel, yellow enamel in this case, and 2 colours of gold, little laurel wreaths, and tied with a diamond bow, emblematic of peace, and the Romanov crown set with diamonds and circled with pearls. And we know it's Fabergé because on the back here, there's the workmaster's initials for August Holming, who was not necessarily a specialist jeweller, but a worker in all manner of enamel work. So goodness me, and there's more at home. There's more souvenirs.
Yes, well, a few more. Yes, a few more.
Now, as for value, the cufflinks are impressive. They're very Russian technique, in the manner of Fabergé, but a rose by any other name smells as sweet, but it certainly isn't as valuable.
No.
And I think with an imperial provenance, nonetheless, they are very desirable, very wearable. And a very precise provenance, so I suppose something like £7,000 or £8,000 for the cufflinks.
Really? My goodness gracious me.
Nothing to do with intrinsic value, nothing at all. These, I believe them to be Fabergé from a technical basis, really, and as souvenirs of Nicholas II, which is absolutely certain. I think we can go a bit mad again. £8,000 to £10,000 for those. You feeling calm? It's very, very good, isn't it? Making me nervous.
These are things that I don't really want to sell, you see.
No.
I want to keep, and yes, because they're family pieces.
Well, I think in a way they should be kept together as a collection.
Should they? That's what I wanted to ask you.
Context everything here and provenance, actually. And what about this one? Any ideas for that one?
Well, if these are that price, that must be £10,000.
Well, it is £10,000, and it's more than £10,000.
Is it?
Yep. It's £15,000.
My dear chap, God.
It's wonderful.
That's amazing. I never realised it would be as much as that, I must confess.
No.
Well, this is a piece of silver from the officers' mess of the King's Royal Hussars, and it was presented to the 10th Hussars, Prince of Wales's own, by King George IV on his accession to the throne, to commemorate his time in command of the 10th Hussars.
Do you know what most people don't realise about these great centerpieces? Is what extraordinary construction kits they are. And if you don't get these in the right place, they don't necessarily fit properly. So do you know who made it?
We believe it was made by a silversmith called Paul Storr.
We've actually got a maker's mark appearing here, and the maker's mark there is PR. Now that is not Paul Storr's mark. In fact, the clue to the whole thing is, where are we? Here we are. The inscription that runs around here, Rundle Bridge et Rundle Orifice Regis. Rundle Bridge and Rundle, the royal goldsmiths. The maker's mark there is that of Philip Rundell. I would suggest the greatest firm that there has ever been in the history of silver. But what Rundell did was to develop this firm in Ludgate Hill so that you had the top goldsmiths of the day. He wanted all the top men. So Digby Scott, Benjamin Smith, James Smith, and Paul Storr. I mean, it's like a who's who of the Regency period. It is, of course, silver gilt, not gold, which I'm sure is what you realise. It would be pretty well impossible to pick up. Had you considered value?
Well, it's obviously insured amongst the regimental property in silver, and its last valuation, we believe about 10 years ago, had it in the area of £750,000.
Right, 750,000. I would go along with that. It is, after all, a unique piece, commissioned by the King for presentation to one of the greatest of all the regiments. I mean, what a piece to have.
Now, Lord Cholmondeley, of all the wonderful things that are on display in the public parts of the house, these items have come from the private apartments, haven't they?
Yes, this has always been in the hall, the entrance hall downstairs, and under one of the mahogany tables, and used as a waste paper basket, I'm afraid.
with the side
very practical.
You could always put a liner in it, I suppose you want to do that. There should be a pair to it.
There is a pair.
There is a pair.
Yeah,
that's the other side. The other waste paper basket. You're coming in or going out of the house. Well, they're plate buckets. That accounts for the fact that it has a gap so that you can lift the plates in and out. And they were carried from the kitchen to the dining room in pairs and carried on a yoke. So you did. I mean, they're so heavy. Anyway, that's quite heavy with that. Yes. Yes. Milk pails. So they've sort of carried them in pairs. This is rather a nice size one, and probably for dessert plates rather than dinner plates.
Right.
It's got a particularly pretty little brass mount around here, which is sort of 1810 to 1815. Which is about the right date for these things. They sort of tended to go out of fashion by about 1830 and weren't introduced as such until the sort of 1780s, so they're a fairly short lifespan. And their value, I mean, in pairs usually today between £6,000 and £8,000, depending on their size and quality. But of course, as soon as you have a provenance like this great house, then prices can make anything, because in future it means that someone's going to own it and say, well, this came from Houghton Hall. Yes. So I think we have to ignore the provenance side and say a pair of these should be insured for, say, £7,500 to £8,000.
Really?
But as their provenance makes them unique, then they couldn't be replaced.
Well, I think we certainly shouldn't be using this waste paper.
Well,
actually find another use.
Put a few plates in just to remind you what they're for.
Exactly.
And then we have this extraordinary wassail bowl, which is made of one of the most dense timbers known, which is lignum vitae. If you threw that into the lake, it would sink.
Really?
Oh, yes, it does not float. And this was a wassail at Christmas time, and you toasted your friends. They're almost big enough to get into, isn't it?
Like a sort of punch.
Absolutely. Oh, yes, sure. With apples and alcohol and all sorts of things. I mean, it really is a stunning piece. It's one of the largest I've ever seen. There is one maybe a tad bigger, but if not certainly the same size, in the Victoria and Albert Museum, which has a crisscross pattern cut onto it, and the original fitments to go in those little holes. And those were little cups with a spike on. And I suppose 1640 this was made.
Really? Very early.
Yes. Where does this live, by the way?
This lives by Sir Robert Walpole's desk in the library. Doesn't have any purpose. It just sits there.
Don't sort of throw anything into this, eh?
No, well, I suppose with a lid. But
it stands on the floor.
But really, it should be exhibited.
This, in today's market, could easily make £25,000.
Really?
Yes. So pop it on a table now.
When I come to a roadshow, I think it's particularly dangerous to try and anticipate what one might find. And I suppose coming to Oldham and this particular part of the country, one must think, well, possibly a work by Ellis Lowry might turn up. But I must say, when this popped out, I mean, I couldn't have been more surprised and delighted, because as far as I'm concerned, it's absolutely right. Having said that, of course, we must go to the museum, the Lowry Museum, and have it checked out. But all my instincts and the way that it looks makes me feel it's absolutely spot on and beautiful. What's the story?
I brought it in for a friend of mine, an elderly gentleman, about 79 years of age. They did belong to his wife, who's passed away. She used to chauffeur Lowry. He was very fond of having people chauffeuring about all over the country. And this is how they came into his possession.
Yes. To all intents and purposes, Lowry's style these industrial buildings,
Yeah.
the figures, the busy streets,
Little
are all
dogs.
rather similar, but I think from this particular period, and if I haven't been mistaken, the date is 1937, a good early period. I just love the colour and the busyness of the streets. And for my own taste, it is not too melancholic, it's not too brooding. It has a busyness and kind of optimistic air, which sometimes is not always apparent in his paintings. Thick paint, we call it impasto. You can see here that he's drawn right through the thickness of paint across these bits here. I particularly love that passage here, these figures in the distance, so they're pushed in and just touched with colour. And also one of the things about it is one can judge it quite carefully, because when they haven't been protected by glass, they get full of grime and dirt. And this has got glass on it, and it's kept the dirt off it. You can see right the way through, and just a little bit of a gentle clean will bring it up into an absolute gem. Now, before we turn to values, let's also look at these other things. Tell me about this little drawing here.
This is a cigarette packet.
Right. Now you can see that because here are the folds of it here going across there. Yes.
Yeah. When this lady was chauffeuring Lowry, he was sat in the car and he started to sketch this. And then when he finished, he was about to throw it through the window. And she said, "Don't do that." And he said, "Well, I'll sign it for you if you want it. It might be of some value someday."
Really, what a lovely story.
Yeah.
So do you think he really was going to throw it out the window?
Yeah.
Yes.
He didn't realise his value of his paintings then.
No. And we've got a photograph here of the great man himself.
Yeah.
And what is so interesting is that, of course, if you could just hold that a second, of course, it shows the subject. This is a painting, and this is the drawing for this painting, but it's saying the same subject, which is a ferry, isn't it, in Scotland, isn't it?
Yes,
the Scottish subject. Yes. And again, this is the later date, September 1958. Now, of course, what we must do is kind of try and work out the value. Now, my word of caution is the attributions must be confirmed by the Lowry Museum. But these little bits and pieces, the cigarette packet, I don't know whether it's worth 1,000 or more, but it could well be. This drawing, number of £1,000. But I think what we're really all dying to kind of really try and know is, what's this worth? Does your friend have any idea of what he thinks it's worth?
No.
He's a shy man, is he?
Oh, yes. Very shy.
Well, I think it's probably worth £100,000.
Oh, gosh. Oh. Oh.
It now becomes a horrible problem, doesn't it?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
If I was being conservative, I suppose 60 to 80, but I think it is so fresh, so wonderful, has not been on the market. The prices have been quite extraordinary, and I wouldn't be surprised if it could fetch £100,000 or more.
It's never been up the wall.
Wonderful to be here in the Victoria and Albert Museum, but I never expected that we'd actually get brought in a museum quality picture. But that's what you've brought. It is fantastic quality. It really is. Just look at the way he has handled the whole light in this market scene. The way the light comes off the candle and illuminates her face. It's the most brilliant piece of work. And you've got the source of light here, then you've got another candle light here, and tremendously subtle lighting in. Look at the reflections on this copper jug, wonderfully handled, and the way this boy and this young man are conversing. He's looking at him, but he's looking across at her. Wonderful little narrative details in this overall scene. Has it been in your family for some time?
It was in my husband's family.
Right.
And I think his father bought it many years ago.
Was there any particular significance to the subject, do you think, for your father-in-law when he bought it?
Well, he worked in the fish market as a young boy.
did he?
And his father was in the fish market before him. And so I imagine that because it's a market scene, that's what appealed to him.
Absolutely.
But I don't know, really.
But also the fact that it's on the quayside.
Yes.
There probably is fish being sold somewhere in the distance here.
I would guess so.
And the sort of moonlit nighttime markets would have been something that he would have remembered.
He had a good eye for paintings.
He certainly did.
And I think I had a good eye because when they split the house up when the parents-in-law died, this was the one thing that I really loved.
It's a very good choice you made. A very good choice.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much more when you get into it. There's this wonderful moonlight at the top of the picture. Again, sort of illuminating the silhouettes of the buildings and the rigging of the ships behind, because
they're rigging. I
this
didn't know what they were.
rigging of sailing vessels,
yes, of course.
incredibly beautifully handled, very subtle. And then, to reveal all, down at the bottom, is the signature here.
Yes.
P. van Schendel.
Yes.
Petrus van Schendel. A Dutch painter, but he worked in Belgium and Holland, and he absolutely specialised in these moonlit, candlelit scenes. It was his trademark, if you like. It was what he was absolutely brilliant at. And he was working in the middle of the 19th century, between about 1830 and 1870 was when he was really in his prime, painted in oil on this very nice bit of wood. Well, just quality is the word for it. It is by probably the leading candlelight painter of the 19th century.
That I didn't know. I did see some of Van Schendel's paintings in New York.
Yes.
2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
Or perhaps 5 years ago.
Yeah. No. Well, his work does come up quite regularly at auction, so we know reasonably clearly what this probably would make. I think at auction now he's very much in vogue. He's very much sought after. A lot of people collect him. Probably make between £70,000 and £90,000. So you should probably insure it for £100,000.
Wow. Thank you.
Almost like winning the lottery. Almost. £100,000 for insurance.
Who is he? My father. He was born in Australia, and he came to this country, and he took his degree in Scotland as a doctor. And then he always loved the sea, so he started by being a ship's doctor.
Gracious.
And that is when he was on the Carpathia and the Titanic.
He was on the Carpathia?
Yes. And
what was his job on the Carpathia?
As a doctor.
As the only doctor?
The only doctor,
Good
yes.
Gracious.
Yeah.
It says, presented to Dr. McGee as a slight token of affection and esteem by these survivors of the Titanic, April the 15th, 1912.
Yes.
They must have felt incredibly warmly towards him. I mean, he was just the
they
man who had
yes.
pulled them back from the brink of death.
Yes, I think so.
What do you think happened that night on the Carpathia?
Well, he didn't talk about it too much because it was so awful. And he said there was, all these frozen people he had to deal with brought out of the sea. And it was quite horrific.
Must have been terrifying.
He said it was terrifying. And of course, there were lots of troubles, which I won't go into, about why it was so horrific. But he didn't want to talk about that too much either.
Yeah. What an amazing story this is. Because as you know, at the moment, there's a sort of fever of Titanic interest.
Yes.
Everybody's been to see the film. There have been huge reports in the press about the whole story of it, as to why it happened, why certain people got the lifeboats and other people didn't. Up here we have a Humane Society award for him and all his bravery at that time.
Yes.
He really must have been a most extraordinary and remarkable man.
Yes.
This is a silver medal.
Yes.
Presented by the Humane Society, which went in conjunction with the certificate at the back. But this is something quite different. This is the most extraordinary thing. This is presented to captain, officers and crew of RMS Carpathia from the survivors of the Titanic, April 15th, 1912. That is made out of 14-carat gold.
Yes.
And there were only 14 of them made.
Oh, yes.
Did you know that?
I didn't know that, no.
It's an extraordinarily rare thing. Only the most outstanding officers received one of these awards.
Yes.
It's almost unheard of if you think in the whole world there are 14 of these objects. The even more peculiar thing is that one of these was sold recently.
Yes.
Now, presumably, you would never consider selling any of these objects because they're all family objects.
Yes.
They are perhaps things that you might consider insuring.
Yes. Haven't insured them, yes.
I think it's extremely important you do so, because in New York, in 1997, one of these medals was sold for $50,000.
Yes.
So that equates roughly to £30,000 now.
George heavens. I had no idea. Can't believe it.
So I think what we have here, looking at your whole collection of objects, are probably things that ought to be insured for £50,000.
Yes, thank you. Yes. It's amazing.
How can you measure one man's valour?
Indeed.
Thank you very, very, very much.
It's been a very moving day for us. Thank you.
Henry Moore was the most original artist of the 20th century. In fact, not since Rodin in the 19th century, I think, had anybody been quite so original as him. You can imagine my surprise to see such an enormous collection of letters from this incredibly great artist, and quite a few of them illustrated, like this one, to Dearest Evelyn. Now, who is Dearest Evelyn?
She's my mother.
She's your mother, and these are all written, I mean, Dearest Evelyn, I can't help just reading a few comments here, seem to be incredibly, incredibly intimate and very, very important. Did they have a very close relationship?
I think that she rather hoped that it would lead to something more than it perhaps did.
Marriage or something like that?
I think possibly, yes.
Yes. Well, I don't know. I think that he left her a very nice legacy with these wonderful illustrated letters. This is quite an incredible collection. I mean, this one here to Dearest Evelyn with this lovely, I suppose in Picasso terms, you'd say blue period. And this one here too, which is just absolutely charming, this nude under the mistletoe, which I think is absolutely wonderful. And then these letters go on for pages and pages and pages. But however, I think the one that I think is most extraordinary is this letter here, which is Dearest Evelyn, and then with this wonderful, absolutely incredible doodle, which is so like Moore, it's just incredible. Here is a picture of him in the centre here. This is your letter. He's reading her letter. And then a speech bubble over here. Just an attempt which has failed, which I think is absolutely wonderful. I'm going to bed. I'm tired. I mark myself beforehand. Good night, Evelyn.
I like it where he rates it 5 out of 10.
5 out of 10. I think that's right. So, having known Moore, did you have any other paintings or pictures?
My mother had a portrait of herself by him, which I can remember as a child, but we lived in a house whose garden went down to the Thames at Kew, and twice we were flooded. The cellar was full to about 8 foot, and it was submerged again, and I can remember having that the insurers paid £500 for it.
They paid you £500 for an oil portrait of your mother by
I think it
Henry
might have been
Moore.
a drawing, I can't remember it, or a black and white sketch.
What a pity.
Yes,
but I mean,
it was.
this is incredible. You've got a collection here of what, 30 odd love
About
letters?
31, yeah.
Well, love letters, very intimate letters anyway, shall we say. Many with lovely drawings in. I mean, this is just so typical of Henry Moore. It's breathtaking. And I've seen very few Henry Moore letters come onto the market. Still less have I seen ones with drawings in them. But I mean, a drawing by Henry Moore of your mother or somebody like that would probably make the best part of £100,000 on the market today.
They got 500 for it, yeah.
500, whereas a drawing, a small drawing on this scale, of this size, I think would make today the best part of, £10,000. And, you know, these other drawings here, the sort of blue period ones, these are sort of certainly worth a few £1,000s each. So this collection, this magnificent collection of Henry Moore, would, I suppose, be worth somewhere in the region of about £50,000.
Good heavens. Well, I just brought them along because I thought somebody might like to read them if there was a biographer. And
You're absolutely right. I think the chances are that no biographer has actually had a chance to read these at all.
This painting, which you've kindly brought along today, is by Walter Osborne, a very interesting artist, an Irishman born in Dublin, and he painted in a very modern way, really. And this one, painted in 1901, is done in a most beautiful, very liquid way. He's brought the brush very quickly across the surface of the canvas to suggest the dress. He's done an awful lot of suggestion and successful depiction with very little actual brush strokes. You know, it's almost abbreviated. It's like a shorthand. Of course, it's quite thinly painted in some areas, and I think we'll have to call it an oil sketch, but it is extremely beautiful and very effective. And I'd love to know where on earth you got it from. Perhaps you can tell me.
Well, the painting belongs to St Colum's Cathedral.
St. what Cathedral?
St Colum's Cathedral in London there.
Right.
And it was a gift to the cathedral after the person who owned it died.
Oh, I see. And the person who owned it, was she the sitter, perhaps?
No, the lady in the painting is Eleanor Alexander, the daughter of a very famous lady and gentleman. Her mother was Mrs. Cecil Frances Alexander, a well-known hymn writer throughout the world, and her father was Bishop Alexander.
I confess I did a little bit of homework, and I wondered whether a portrait he exhibited in 1901 that's now in the palace in Armagh, which was entitled The Archbishop of Armagh,
right,
William Alexander,
yeah,
could have
right.
been
her father.
Her father.
It is, yeah.
Yes,
After he was bishop in Derry, his wife died in 1895, and he went on to be Archbishop in Armagh after that.
Yeah, I see.
And
Right.
this lady, Eleanor, left the picture to her companion, who then left it to her daughter, who then left it to the cathedral.
Oh, I see. Yeah. And you're from the cathedral, are you?
We are. We're the church wardens.
You've been deputed to bring it today.
Yes.
Drew the short straw.
Delegate.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I mean, I'm very thrilled you did bring it, because I think it is one of the nicest things I've seen today, perhaps the nicest, which is quite a thrill. Now, Walter Osborne died young, and he was an extremely popular man in Dublin, and he was a good teacher too, so there were many pupils and friends who mourned his passing. He died suddenly of pneumonia in 1903, and that's 2 years after this picture was painted in 1901. His work is really popular now. The value of the picture is quite a surprise, actually. I believe it to be between £40,000 and £60,000.
My goodness.
I've had to bring it down from where I started, which was possibly 60 to 80, simply because it being an oil sketch and quite late, I thought maybe I ought to be a little bit cautious. But I can see this picture, because it's so attractive, driving its price up to more than 80,000. It's a possibility.
That's wonderful news.